Brad Windler here with Vaughn Construction. I am going into my 20th year of employment at Vaughn. It's kind of hard to believe when I say that. I've spent about 4 years in Houston, about 6 years in College Station, and these past 9 years I've been in Dallas-Fort Worth market, doing mostly higher education projects, some healthcare. But as it relates to this topic of design assist, I've worked on 8 projects that have utilized the design assist approach, and it's interesting to note that 7 of those were for public clients here in the state of Texas. Those jobs have ranged from $5 million to $300 million, so pretty good experience as it relates to design assist and processes.
Yeah, and we've had the benefit of working together with you guys on a few of these, and one of the reasons we wanted to talk with you today around design assist is that we've got a lot of volatility in the market, and in particular, we're getting some pretty substantial mechanical, electrical numbers coming back from the market. Some are in target, but we're getting this range. Example on a hospital we're working on for the central plant, we got one number at 8 million, one number at 12 million, one number at 16 million, right?
Yeah.
And so as a pre-con team, we're trying to determine, what do we do with that? What do we budget? Do we cut scope and get that $16 million number in, or are we in good shape with the 8 million? So one of the solutions that's come up is, well, let's do design assist. Let's sit down and negotiate with these subs. And so I know you've done it in the past. Is this a good kind of situation to go this route with the volatility, or how do you determine when you want to go design assist?
I guess I'm going to put the first part of your question on hold for a second, just and address the how do we determine if we want to use design assist even in today's market. So there's 3 things that we look at as a team, and I would say this needs to be done very early in the process. And by early, I mean, as a construction manager, we're thinking about, is design assist something that we want to think about or propose as we're pursuing a job? But definitely when we're brought on board, very soon thereafter, we want to start talking about design assist and if it's something we want to do. And we want to do it as a team, because I think that's something that gets lost a lot on these projects that I've heard about negative experiences in the team didn't really gel. And so we're not bringing on, in the case of MEP, we're not bringing on MEP subs, we're bringing on MEP partners that are going to collaboratively work with the team. And so I think that's a good mentality to set.
Didn't we, on one of them, the selection process, we said, well, we'd like to go with your firm as long as you confirm that's your project leader, right? The individual that was going to lead it. That was a very a prerequisite to them getting the contract.
Absolutely. And since that job about 6 years ago, we're actually now, it's like, we want the boots on the ground guys that are going to be running the job come into the interviews, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that in a minute, but because we want to see who we're going to interact with. I mean, that's huge. But getting back to, how do you determine if you want to use design assist or not, even in today's market? So there's 3 things that we look at. Market conditions. 5 years ago, I would have only have ever thought about labor, and who would have ever thought we'd be going through what we're going through right now as it relates to materials and escalation and all the craziness that we're dealing with right now. But definitely labor is something that we want to look at. I'm reminded of the 2015 tuition revenue bonds that came out and just the mad rush of jobs, which maybe we're going to see here again soon. And just being concerned with some of these projects and making sure that we had the pick of the litter when it came to teams that we wanted to work with, and making sure we're also locking in that labor force. So market conditions, the rates to labor, and then also, as of late, your mind can run with this, just the material issues that we've been looking at. So I think that's something we look at. Schedule. So 3 of my design assist experiences were dictated by schedule. We couldn't get done fast enough. And what's interesting is all 3 of those jobs, one of them was about $10 million and 2 of them were about $5 million. So they were smaller projects where we elected to utilize design assist because of pace. And then finally, complexity. That's the other thing that we'll look at. So, when it gets down to a big research laboratory or a hospital, in any of the markets that I've operated in, there's a handful of trades that are competent and qualified to do that, to do those jobs. And so, I do think you want to factor in the selection pool, and does it make sense to bring somebody on board early, again taking into account schedule, their ability of those guys subs ability of manpower, and then also market conditions. So I think complexity of project is something you want to look into. I would also offer up design assist is definitely not for every job. And just because it's big doesn't mean you need to do design assist. I think you need to take a hard look at that as a team on the front end.
When you go this route, maybe the answer is really quick on this, but is it contracting difficult? Is there a lot of gymnastics you have to do?
Yeah, no, contracting is really easy. And I'll use MEP as an example first. So generally for our MEP partners that we bring on board, we're going to be doing it at earlier, like maybe early DDs, schematic design, something like that. We'll issue an agreement for pre-construction services, very similar to how owners do with construction managers. And then we will issue an agreement for construction phase services much later in the process. And I would tell you 9.5 times out of 10 based on 100% CDs. That gets a little bit different for some other trades like envelope trades, glass and glazing, metal panels, maybe elevators. Structure could fall into this where we would go about that process different, where we actually lock in a subcontract agreement as we onboard the design assist partner. We don't do a pre-construction agreement, and we can do that because, and I'll use curtain wall as an example. If you get to the end of DDs, which is you're not starting to develop details, and you really don't necessarily need the glass guy's expertise until you start developing details. You have a defined amount of curtain wall on a job. So a given job has 20,000 square feet of curtain wall. How the details specifically interact with what surrounds doesn't necessarily matter too much to their pricing. So there's a very low risk to locking in with a sub early or at the time you bring them on board for items like metal panels or glass and glazing, because it's a defined square footage. And as long as that doesn't change, their price isn't going to change. I think the key thing here is just being flexible because each job is unique. We want to do what's best for the job, but as it relates to how we contract with them, I would avoid GMP contracts at all costs. There's too much documentation involved, and frankly, I want the flexibility to get all the way through design and pre-construction and be able to maneuver around that partner if for some reason that needed to happen. If things changed from the interview process, if we didn't get what we thought we were buying, type of thing. I've not personally had that happen. I don't know of too many jobs that have, but we do like that ability to make a change if we need to. And it's no different than how construction managers are contracted. So I think it's some people may say, well, does that impact the team atmosphere and that kind of thing? Nah, not at all.
Even if you have, let's say, a mechanical design assist partner on board, when you get to 100% documents, you're still sending that out to the street to multiple subs to get numbers back in. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, no, we're not.
You're not. Okay.
We're just quote bidding it to the subs, the design assist partner, but they do have to bid it. And you may say, well, how do you do that when they're the only one? There's a few things that we get from them through the bid process. The first one is, actually first, let me ask you a question. For a mechanical plumbing sub combo on a job, what's the labor material breakout typical percentage wise on a contract, whether it's 50 million or 5 million?
Off the top of my head, I would say around half.
Half labor, half material.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably go a little bit higher on the material and equipment side of things. But anyway, we'll have the design assist partner give us a complete breakout on all material and equipment, including commodity materials. So we have our design assist partners bid out commodity materials and provide a recommendation, very much like we do with our subs. They do that with the major equipment. And by the way, institutions love this because we'll interview the equipment providers. When we evaluate air handlers, for example, and whether you're looking at Train or the Temtrol or whoever else, Climate Craft, we'll bring the guys in and interview them and talk about equipment. But as in terms of cost, that's all open book. That's all provided. Something that we get from these partners early on in the process, like when they propose on the job, is labor rates, crew rates, burdens. That's one of the reasons why we like to have auditors involved on our design assist projects, so we can go through all that stuff early. And those rates are things that they use in their estimates. And so we're able to kind of check, not only is the material and equipment totally open book when we quote get bids from them, but we're also evaluating the labor that they've been kind of carrying with them throughout pre-con as we're doing estimates. So we don't technically bid it to the street, but there still is a very competitive nature to it, and we're back checking against the numbers that we get from them when they propose on the job.
Vaughn has an internal database and actually goes in and estimates, which is fantastic. I think it really improves the quality of the pre-con service. I guess what I'm getting at is, so you can say, okay, this curtain wall number looks really good compared to my historical data, or this mechanical number looks good, or it's too high. So in general, how do your prices compare to your comparable data, right? So like, do you feel mechanical when you go design assist has a 5% premium, a 5% savings, it's neutral? What's your big picture take?
Doing the estimates and the takeoff, we're generally close. What the wrinkle that's been added as of late is escalation, and I would say there are two things in regards to escalation. One, you got to level the playing field. What are people carrying now, and what are they projecting in their estimate? You have to regulate that. And then the second thing with escalation is, as a team, is that something that we want to factor in control as an allowance, or do we want to build those numbers into our estimates? And there's schools of thought on both sides of that, but I think the important thing is just addressing escalation as it relates to both the subs estimate and the CM's estimate, to make sure that you're tracking that correctly, because I think a lot of the disparity that we're seeing in numbers these days are because people are doing different things. I know from personal experience, that's what I've seen in some of that big sway is people are projecting within their estimates larger percentages than some. So the easiest thing to do is just level the playing field one way sense. But I would say, Blair, prior to the pricing craziness we've been experiencing here lately, I mean, it's very nice having the ability to check the sub community's numbers against ours when they propose on these jobs, and they generally line up pretty well.
Particularly in a volatile market, this will help you control cost, in my opinion. You kind of have that immediate feedback from, I think talking with a mechanical subcontractor, they pre-purchase their coils, right? So you can work with the sub and say, okay, if we can lock this in, we can go and buy X million pounds of steel for our projects, and you can have this price, or vice versa, right? Oh, steel's jumping, we're gonna have to pay this premium. So having that insight, I don't see how you get that without going design assist.
I think that's a great point. You can get the insight, but and I'm gonna use drywall as an example because I think that's easier to wrap our minds around. For a year now, drywall materials have been going up 10% a month, mostly related to metal and just I'll kind of stay silent on the stud pricing and things that we're seeing. But drywall's been going up a lot, and so we actually shifted gears on a project, and we are bringing a drywall trade on board early. Kind of calling it, I don't know if I would say design assist. It's more like maybe a pre-con assist or an early buy to do what we've dubbed cost avoidance, so that we can go basically buy a bunch of drywall in sealing material now, get in line, if you will, and lock in that pricing, because there's a lot of ambiguity around where the drywall market's going to be in even 6 months from now. Hearing a lot of different things. Some people are saying it's flatten out. Some people are saying they still project it to go up. We just may not see increases in December and November. They're not going to happen again until January. But we as the team on that job have made the decision to go ahead and bring a drywall sub partner on board early. And we're going to take advantage of that as we develop details. And then you can extrapolate that to all the other trades, MEP, that kind of thing. Without belaboring it too much, we're actually doing the same thing with the MEP trade partners on a specific job. We're bringing them on board early, so that with the distinct advantage of doing pre-buy type activities to avoid continued escalation, and then also to get ourselves in line for procurement, because who has not seen air handlers, chillers, boxes slide on all of our jobs? So that's something to definitely take into account when we think about utilizing design assist for sure.
What are some downfalls? What are some things to look out for? When can you run into trouble going design assist?
I'm not a big fan of GMP subcontracts. I think that's you're just setting yourself up for battles. You know, that's actually one of the things that I've heard a lot. There's a few things that I've heard. Maybe we can touch on this too. Drawbacks from design teams, and it's mostly around the MEP trades. And one of those very specifically is, and putting quotes what I heard recently from an MEP engineer is, it was just a bloodbath when it came to pricing. They locked into a GMP, and then all of a sudden everything became a change. And so I think that's one of the hardships that gets presented to a team when that dollar value gets locked in maybe before it has to. Is then maybe somebody feels like the door's open there to enhance fee or make more money or what have you. There's two sides of that coin in terms of scope that's added and timing of that, but I do hear a lot from MEP engineers that it gets really hard with pricing issues related to GMP contracts. I think another pitfall is accountability. So on our design assist projects, our mantra, our buzzword, our slogan is accountability, and then frequently measured against real data. If you don't have that accountability, frequently measured against real data as it relates to schedule, as it relates to estimate, if you don't have those things, I mean, you're kind of flying blind. I mean, it just doesn't. I don't see how you can have a one, collaborative process, but two, make sure that everything's staying course with your budget and your schedules when you're not constantly checking back to recent estimates or schedules and making sure that we as a team are being accountable to the project. So that's accountability is huge. Poor teamwork and communication. I've heard of a lot of design firms, even architects as it relates to some envelope trades, complain about, well, I didn't get much out of the process. I didn't get good support or input from the subs. And frankly, I'd say that's probably an issue with the CM. The term that I use is maybe the CM's playing tennis. He's just allowing the design assist sub to kind of get out there and go back and forth with the design team without intervening. But I think when communication and collaboration is going very well on projects with the design assist partners, it's the CM is really kind of filtering both directions, information from the design assist partner to the rest of the team, and then kind of back from the design team or the owner to the design assist partners, and just making sure everybody's doing the things that they need to do. But you hear a lot of negativity around relationships on these projects, and I think a lot of the time it has to do with just poor communication that's not being supervised by the construction manager. Some of the other things I hear about, in terms of issues on design assist projects, we talked about maybe a design team saying they don't get any value in the process. I've kind of already talked about hearing about lots of issues around pricing, again mostly related to MEP. That goes back to budget accountability. But man, you have got to be reviewing estimates in painstaking detail throughout the process, because if you're not doing that and constantly kind of maintaining an updated cost baseline that you're comparing back to, again, you could be setting yourself up for surprises as you get towards 100 CDs and locking in numbers. So, I think that's really important. Another one I hear all the time, again, from MEP engineers is, I really don't want these guys drawing. I'm most efficient and effective at drawing, and, my response is fantastic. Get that worked out on the front end. I would say you're definitely not taking advantage of the design assist process if your big achievement on the job is the design assist guy is doing the drawing. I don't care who does the drawing as long as we get the mousetrap where we want it, right? So those are some of the things I've heard that are negatives on jobs, and I would say pitfalls, things to watch for.
If you're getting into the supply chain early, how does that work with respect to what you were saying about not fully committing until you're fully drawn?
Yeah, great point. These are kind of new ripples to our process that we're working through, because, thinking about getting a drywaller on board early, in the example I used earlier, has not, for material procurement issues, has not been something that we've traditionally done that I'm aware of. And it is causing us to lock into a hard dollar, not a GMP, but a hard dollar subcontract with that drywaller at 50 CDs as opposed to 100 CDs. So it is early. There's some risk. I would offer that if we have one of the things in that scenario that we're getting the design team to do is they are providing the wall tags and making sure that's all coordinated, and then we're making sure that we have a solid spec about what's required. I think the risk is low when you know your job. When
Right.
like Blair mentioned earlier, I'm leaning heavy on our own takeoff and an internal evaluation of the subs estimates in this case, but also in terms of ours as it relates to scope, and then bring into play past experience. And if there's issues where we feel like we have some exposure, is allocating some funds, not with the sub, but with me and the owner, to address some areas where we feel like there could be some ambiguity and potential costs later on.
Right. So hold some contingency, either like on a line item basis, assign it to whatever specifics, or below the line, or both.
Absolutely. I would I would have it as a line item in the estimate. Yeah, and we're doing the same thing with MEP. I mean, similar type situation. I know we as a company have worked on large projects where we've done pre-buy, and we're about to get into that on a project as it relates to MEP with commodity materials and trying to lock in, one, reduce any increases, but then also what we've all been facing lately, just to make sure we have what we need in time. And I'll go back to the drywall example to be another reason why we're doing this kind of early procurement of a drywall sub on a project, is with the lead times with cold form framing right now. I mean, it's just, it's causing us to think outside the box and do things, and we want to be able to do this while not adding any more additional cost to the job, especially considering, with, what's going on with the market conditions. But
that's something that, like, remember that toilet paper rush. Right. If you take a longer view on the economics of this, and there's a phrase: today's shortage is tomorrow's surplus, and our firm's kind of guilty of this too. It's like, okay, lock it in now because escalation, is going up, and we're projecting 0.5 point per month and all this stuff. But those characterizations of escalation are fundamentally wrong. Essentially, the supply demand happens, there's volatility, and if you encourage everybody to run to the store to get their toilet paper, you're going to be out.
It's funny you say that. I had this exact discussion with our president, Michael Vaughn, and his response was, "Will you be the one that doesn't go get in line? You be the one that tries to start a trend to not go get in line." And that is the exact same analogy that I say. This is the toilet paper phenomena reinvented in all these different. It's why there's 25 times the amount of metal stud orders in line with these big stud manufacturers right now, because everybody is going to get in line to get their material as fast as they can, and we're hurting ourselves by doing that. It's helping this whole lopsided supply and demand, and not encouraging them to drop their prices at the same time.
Yeah, it's something that was, when it's a macroeconomic analysis, the thing that was driving me crazy for decades was let her rip. Well, that's just old school. It's a sawtooth boom bust pattern. It's well known to economics and biology and all these things. It's super well known. Like, can we get a little smarter? And we have, but we're also not, right? And that's what you're pointing to. Just because we take our data and escalate it, and it smooths out into these patterns, does not mean that that's what's happening on the street, and it does not reflect that sawtooth boom bust pattern that happens in market economies and the toilet paper phenomenon, and exactly what you just said there. I think that's fantastic. I think that's something we have to share. It's great to talk about design assist and that, but if there's a takeaway there, it's like, you know what, you might as well wait till the day and do your best in many sense, because if you're the 25 people in line, you're adding to the problem. And I don't know exactly what to do about it, but I think our discourse needs to get away from this get in there early, get in there, lock it in escalation. That is fueling the panic.
I heard a piping supplier out of North Carolina basically took their big clients and they percentaged their last 3 years by and said, you can get this much over the next year rationed per month to get to the yearly total, to try to prevent what we're talking about. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's what we need more suppliers doing, is saying, hold on a minute, what are you doing here?
You don't need this tomorrow. And even if you did, here's how it really works, and roll it out and say, look, you can save this much by waiting, right? That's the opposite mentality, and that would be perfect to get out on the street.
But you have to be careful too, because you don't want to create the opposite momentum swing. And in my mind, I'm looking at a jug of water or something that you've got all the water swaying to one side, and then if you tell everybody, well, hold off on your projects, then all the water swings back to the other side. So there's a happy medium. What you want is everybody to settle down and say, hey, look, we're making enough toilet paper. Just only go buy it when you need it. You don't need 500 rolls at home.
That's right. So yeah, the message is not hold off, and the message is not hurry up. The message is steady on, don't panic. I'm curious as to how design assist procurement works for multi-phased projects.
The answer is you have one design assist partner, and then you have they're basically bidding just like they would anybody else, 3 different packages, and they may have 3 different subcontracts, but you can still roll with this method when you have multiple packages.